Who dominating the world, the dark or the light chosen ones? We begin by asking a question that pierces through the veil of every assumption we've made about this world. Who's really in control? Those of the light or those of the dark? And I don't mean this in a political sense or in the obvious metrics of power like money, armies, or influence. I mean spiritually, cosmically, energetically. The frequency of the planet is shifting, we all feel it, but the battle that shapes it isn't fought with weapons or legislation, it's fought within and around us, in dimensions most people can't see. Yet you and I, we've always felt it, like a quiet war humming beneath every conversation, every decision, every strange synchronicity. You wouldn't even be watching this if you didn't feel the pull between two ancient forces that are now, once again, clashing on a global scale. To understand who's dominating, we have to first understand what domination even means in spiritual terms. The light doesn't dominate through force. It penetrates, it illuminates, it reveals what has been hidden. It brings clarity to confusion. The light expands your consciousness. But the dark, true dark, not evil as Hollywood would sell it, is not merely the villain. The dark contains the silence, the mystery, the womb of creation. Disrupts illusion. It is uncomfortable because it reveals the unconscious, not because it is malicious. This is where many people get lost. They think light means good and dark means bad. That's a lie that keeps you spiritually asleep. The real chosen ones, light or dark, aren't caught up in appearances. They're forces, frequencies, roles, missions. And they are both needed, but not always in equal measure at every moment in time.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Then, who is currently dominating the world? To answer that, we must look at what kind of frequency is shaping human behavior right now. We are witnessing mass awakenings and mass breakdowns. More people than ever are questioning their programming, dismantling their trauma, and seeking truth beyond surface-level spirituality. But alongside that, we're seeing engineered fear, division, addiction to validation, digital hypnosis, and artificial distraction reaching new heights. That contradiction is the mark of a real spiritual war. A war where both light and dark chosen ones are active, but in very different ways. Light chosen ones work by illuminating systems from within. They often take the path of healing, teaching, restoring clarity, offering love. They move like water, flowing into cracks, soothing suffering, embodying peace in a storm. But their power is not always loud. In fact, their greatest strength is often quiet endurance. They anchor timelines of truth, and many people won't realize how much light they're holding until they're gone. That's the painful paradox. The more light you carry, the less visible you often are to a world obsessed with spectacle. Now, contrast that with the dark chosen ones. These are not evil people. In fact, many of them are the strongest healers, but not the kind you want if you're seeking comfort. They are destroyers of illusions. They don't heal through hugs, they heal through confrontation. They pull shadows out of people by triggering them. They disrupt false identities. They break you open so the real you can finally breathe. And that makes them dangerous, not because they're violent, but because they force truth to surface. And truth, as you know, is not convenient to the current system. So, who is dominating? Right now, I'd argue the dark chosen ones are beginning to take the lead, not because they're more powerful than the light, but because the world is at a point where false light isn't enough anymore. The illusions are too sticky, too embedded in institutions' narratives and minds, and so we need the fire, the sword, the uncomfortable awakeners, the ones who burn down the fake temples so new ones can be built. If you felt lately like the world is getting more intense, more raw, more unpredictable, it's not just you. It's the consequence of more dark chosen ones stepping into their role as disruptors and fewer light chosen ones willing to absorb the collective pain. But here's the twist. Domination isn't the same as completion. The world needs both. We are not here to crown a winner. We are here to ask the deeper question, which energy is the world ready for? Because the world doesn't get the chosen ones it wants, it gets the ones it needs to evolve. And sometimes that means more chaos than calm, more demolition than decoration, more death of old paradigms than peace under their false safety. So I ask you, in your own life, which part of you is showing up more, the light or the dark? And is it based on alignment or avoidance? Because the truth is, domination isn't just planetary, it's internal. Every day, you choose which side of you gets to speak louder, and the world reflects that choice, multiplied by billions. That's the real war. Not out there, in here. When darkness leads the way, why the light can't rise without it. We've been taught to fear the dark, to push it away, to label it as the enemy of the light. But the truth is far more unsettling and empowering. Darkness is not the absence of light, it's the condition that makes light visible. Without the dark, there is no contrast, no revelation, no journey. And that's why, for millennia, every soul who has truly awakened has had to first descend into themselves, into pain, into the realm of shadows they didn't want to face, because the path to light does not bypass the dark, it walks straight through it. This is where most people get stuck. They want to rise without falling, they want clarity without confusion, they want power without suffering, but every chosen one, especially those carrying light, must be initiated by darkness. That's not a punishment, it's precision. If you're going to carry light, you have to know what it means to be without it. You have to stand in a place so dark, so barren, that when your light finally returns, you don't mistake it for ego. You recognize it as sacred. And that reverence, that humility, is what makes your light trustworthy. But let's go deeper. Why does the dark lead the way? Because spiritual strength isn't built in moments of ease. It's forged in loss, betrayal, grief, and uncertainty. It's easy to speak of love when everyone claps. It's another thing to embody love when you've been silenced, exiled, broken, and misunderstood. That's where the dark trains you. It strips away everything false, your labels, your status, your social masks, until only one question remains: who am I when no one sees me? The dark chosen ones have already walked through this crucible. That's why their energy is raw, unfiltered, unapologetic. They don't care if they offend your comfort zone, because they've lived in the war zone within themselves. They've sat with their rage, their guilt, their shame. They've eaten with their demons and found the lesson hidden in each bite. And it's precisely that depth of self-knowledge that allows them to lead others, not through sugar-coated love, but through the clarity of truth. So how does this affect the light chosen ones? in more ways than most realize, because many light bearers, in their effort to avoid conflict, accidentally become slaves to illusion. They shine so brightly that they blind themselves. They become addicted to being liked, to staying gentle, to keeping harmony, even when that harmony is built on suppression. And so the dark steps in, not to destroy them, but to awaken them, to test their foundations, to ask the questions they're too polite to ask, to rip the masks off their perfection and remind them that light without shadow is just a performance. There's something deeply humbling about realizing that your enemy might be your greatest teacher, that the person who triggers you most may be your soul's mirror, that your fear of the dark isn't about evil, it's about the parts of yourself you're still not ready to embrace. You see, true power doesn't come from choosing light over dark. It comes from choosing integration over separation, from saying, I am both, and because I am both, I see clearly. This is why we are in such a profound moment on Earth. The ones rising now aren't those with the cleanest resumes or the most followers. They're the ones who have tasted ruin and didn't run. The ones who've cried in silence and still showed up for others. The ones who've been misunderstood but kept speaking. These are the leaders of the new Earth, not because they have answers, but because they've walked the question. And maybe this is what the world is finally ready for. Not saints, not saviors, but humans who have become whole. Humans who don't pretend to be pure, but have purified themselves in the fire of their own honesty. Humans who've been to the edge of themselves and didn't jump, but instead built a bridge back to truth. And when that happens, when enough of us stop fearing the dark, we stop needing domination at all. Because domination is just the ego's desperate attempt to control what it doesn't understand. So let me ask you something brutally honest. What part of your life are you still keeping light just to avoid discomfort? Where are you faking peace to avoid necessary confrontation? And if you dared to enter that shadow, what version of you might finally emerge? Because the light is not absent, it's waiting, in the very place you're avoiding, in the silence, in the wound, in the shadow. The silent rise, how dark chosen ones are reshaping the system without being seen. Most people think domination is loud, that it's in headlines, awards and stages, that the ones shaping the world must be the ones constantly seen, constantly celebrated, constantly followed. But what if I told you that the most powerful beings influencing the world right now don't even want to be seen? That the true architects of the new era are not seeking followers. They're seeking alignment. And their moves are quiet, precise, and impossible to trace by conventional thinking. Our chosen ones aren't here to play the same game as everyone else. They don't care about fitting into the system. They're not here to impress it, improve it, or ask permission to change it. They're here to replace it from within, one energetic rupture at a time. It starts with presence. You can't fake the vibration of someone who's been through the abyss and come out not begging for light, but carrying it. These beings walk into rooms and something shifts, even if no one can explain why. Systems built on manipulation, fear, and superficiality begin to glitch in their presence, because their very frequency is incompatible with illusion. They don't need to shout, they don't need to prove, they just exist, and everything artificial around them begins to tremble. And this is the ultimate revolution. Not rebellion, not riots, but resonance. Dark chosen ones are tuning forks at divine disruption. They walk into businesses and suddenly toxic leadership collapses. They enter relationships and old dead dynamics get exposed. They speak softly, but when they do, people feel called out, not by ego, but by truth. Because when you carry the weight of your own shadow gracefully, you become a mirror for others who are still running from theirs. This is why their power scares people, not because they intend harm, but because they force everyone around them to confront what's been hidden. They don't mean to make others uncomfortable, but their mere existence is a threat to everything fake. They don't bow to titles, they don't worship systems, and they certainly don't follow rules just because someone in a suit said so. Why? Because they remember. They've always remembered. Remembered what? That systems are illusions, that no empire lasts, that power that requires submission is weakness dressed in gold. The dark chosen ones are immune to the seduction of temporary status because they've already died to themselves 1,000 times. Fame can't hypnotize them. Money doesn't impress them. Praise doesn't stick. Their compass points to something deeper, something eternal, and that makes them unstoppable. So while the world looks to influencers, celebrities, and politicians for leadership, something far more potent is unfolding underground, in the energy fields, in the quantum, in rooms where no one's filming and nobody's clapping. The silent rise isn't a conspiracy, it's a correction, and it's being led by those who don't care about being known, only about being real. But let's talk about strategy, because this isn't chaos, it's chess. The dark chosen ones are not reactive, they are deliberate. They don't just rebel against the system, they study it. They master its language, its blind spots, its rhythm, and then they gently introduce distortion, not to destroy, but to reveal. They don't shout, "This is wrong." They ask, "What happens when we remove this?" And suddenly the whole tower falls without them ever pushing it. It's an art, the art of energetic architecture. While others scream for revolution, the dark ones redesign frequency fields so subtly that by the time the old leaders realize what's happening, the foundation's already been recoded. The people no longer resonate with fear, the employees no longer respond to control, the lovers no longer tolerate betrayal. It's not a war, it's an awakening. This is why domination doesn't look how it used to. It's no longer about armies or governments. It's about vibrational dominance, about whose frequency sets the tone. And right now, in boardrooms, on streets, in schools, and in bedrooms, the tone is changing, not loudly, not violently, but irrevocably. And this leads us to a question most people never dare to ask. If the dark chosen ones are truly in power now, what happens to those who refuse to evolve? What happens to the souls clinging to hierarchy, illusion, and control? Can they survive in a world built on raw, radiant truth? Or will they simply fade, not by force, but by frequency? The final shift, when light and dark no longer compete, but complete. There will come a moment, maybe sooner than we expect, when the world realizes that the age-old battle between light and dark was never a war to be won, but a union waiting to be understood. This is the final shift, the ultimate turning point, when the false narrative of good versus evil collapses and something deeper, far more sacred emerges: balance. You see, the light-chosen ones were never here to dominate through purity alone. And the dark chosen ones were never meant to control through shadows. They were always two ends of a sacred spectrum, each incomplete without the other. One brings illumination, the other brings truth. One heals, the other reveals. One uplifts, the other disarms. Together, they don't just coexist, they catalyze evolution. But most of humanity isn't ready for that idea. We've been trained to pick sides, to label one energy holy and the other profane. But what if the light blinds without the depth of shadow? What if the dark corrupts without the compass of light? What if true spiritual dominance isn't choosing one path, but mastering both? This is where the most advanced chosen ones come in, those rare souls who carry both codes in their DNA, the hybrids, the alchemists, the ones who were never satisfied being only warriors of the light or keepers of the dark. They walk both realms, speak both languages, understand both pain and purity. And that's why they're the true leaders of this next era, because they're not here to conquer, they're here to complete, to weave the cosmic threads that once tore each other apart, to remind us that wholeness isn't about deleting our shadows or romanticizing our light. It's about embracing both so fully that nothing within us remains fragmented. Let me ask you a question, one that only the bravest can answer honestly. What part of your light are you most afraid of? And what part of your darkness are you still hiding from? Because until we face both, we're not whole. And until we're whole, we can't hold the frequency that this new earth requires. This isn't a spiritual game anymore, it's an energetic initiation. And those who pass are not the ones who shout the loudest, but those who sit in silence and let every part of themselves speak. The world isn't being led by the loud anymore, it's being led by the integrated, the self-aware, the ones who've danced in fire and come out not seeking to be worshipped, but to be real. So, who's dominating the world? The ones who no longer need to. Because when you've merged light and dark within yourself, you no longer crave external power. You are the power. You no longer seek permission to lead. You become a vortex others naturally follow. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence reorders the field. It's not leadership by force, it's leadership by frequency. And in the end, isn't that the deepest mastery? Not to eliminate shadow or idolize light, but to become the bridge between both. To be the living answer to a world that still thinks in opposites. This is your invitation, not to pick a side, but to become the space where sides dissolve. Because when light and dark no longer compete, they complete. And that, my friend, is when true domination begins. Not over others, but over illusion itself.